He left New Orleans with a full tank of gas, a pair of shoes polished under a gas station light, and a dream far too big to fit in the back seat of his Honda Civic. He slept in the car, changed clothes behind a dumpster, brushed his teeth in a roadside bathroom. And now, standing there in front of the cameras, the judges, and the millions who would one day be watching, he has only one shot, one song, one voice. But is the world ready to hear what Malik has to say? The NBC Universal Studios lot in Burbank buzzed with its usual Tuesday morning rhythm. Golf carts zipped by, production assistants shouted instructions into walkie-talkies, and the scent of strong studio coffee mingled with crisp November air. It was autumn in Los Angeles, the kind that didn't come with falling leaves, but with something more elusive: hope. The kind of hope that brought people from across the country to chase something bigger than themselves. Malik Johnson, 22, sat in the holding area just outside Studio 8B, knees bouncing beneath his perfectly pressed burgundy shirt. He gripped his worn sheet music like a lifeline, fingertips brushing over the frayed edges. His black dress shoes gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a miracle, considering they'd been polished under gas station lamplight just 2 nights ago. He had driven 16 hours from New Orleans, alone, with nothing but a playlist of gospel, soul classics, and his mother's voice echoing in his heart. Don't let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter, baby. The world don't move without voices like yours. He had slept in the back seat of his Honda Civic behind a Walmart in Arizona, brushed his teeth at a rest stop in Barstow, changed into this outfit behind a gas station dumpster. But right now, he sat with his back straight, his head high, because this was it. Next, barked a voice from across the room, Jessica Crawford, the assistant to the casting director. Her eyes didn't leave her iPad. Malik stood. A few heads turned, not because they knew who he was, but because something about him made people pause. Maybe it was the quiet intensity, or the fact that while most auditionees wore stage-ready smiles, Malik wore purpose. He walked through the door of Studio 8B into a space humming with bright lights and pressure. 3 judges sat behind a sleek, backlit desk beneath the glow of red recording lights. To the left, Melody Kane, a platinum-selling R&B artist with Billboard hits and a no-nonsense attitude. In the middle, Rick Harrison, a Grammy-winning producer known for discovering raw, unpolished talent. And to the right, her reputation sharper than her bob cut, Victoria Sterling, the show's creator and executive producer, a woman whose silence could be more brutal than a critique. Cameras moved on robotic arms. A boom mic hovered overhead. Malik felt the weight of every eye in the room, and those that would eventually be watching from living rooms across the country. "State your name and where you're from," Victoria said, eyes glued to her phone. "Malik Johnson, from New Orleans, Louisiana." That made her pause. Rick looked up with mild curiosity. Melody lowered her coffee cup. "New Orleans," Rick echoed. "You've got some soul in your bones then, huh?" Malik gave a quiet nod. "And what are you singing for us today?" "A Change Is Gonna Come," by Sam Cooke. Victoria finally lifted her gaze. The shift was subtle, but Malik caught it, the flicker of skepticism in her eyes. "That's quite a choice," she said. Her voice wasn't cruel, but there was a certain professional detachment. "Very ambitious. Are you sure you can handle something that complex?" Malik stood a little straighter. He'd heard versions of that question his whole life. In classrooms, in job interviews, in every room where people silently wondered if someone like him was too much or not enough. He took a breath. "Yes, ma'am," he said, voice calm but firm. "This song means everything to me." Melody gave a small nod. She'd seen enough auditions to know when someone meant it. "All right then," she said. "Whenever you're ready." But she reached for her water bottle with a practiced hand, the move of someone bracing for a predictable performance. What she didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that Malik hadn't come here to impress them. He came to testify. Malik closed his eyes, just for a second, to silence the chaos, the lights, the nerves. He thought of his mother in New Orleans, humming this same melody while washing dishes. He thought of his uncle Isaiah, who played Sam Cooke on a battered vinyl record every Sunday after church, saying, This here? This is scripture. And then he sang. No music. Just voice. Pure. Full. Weighted. It was a kind of voice that didn't just hit notes. It carried stories. Pain. Survival. Hope. Generations of it. Woven into each line like stitches in a quilt. I was born by the river. The opening floated through the room like a prayer. The sound seemed to pull the air from the studio, leaving stillness behind. Even the camera operators, seasoned, unshakable, paused for a beat. But Malik didn't notice their reactions. He wasn't performing for them. He was remembering. He was honoring. He was telling the truth. Then, thank you, that's enough. The words hit like a cold wind. Malik opened his eyes, confused. Mid-verse. Ma'am. His voice cracked slightly. Victoria Sterling raised a hand, sharp and polished, like everything about her. Your voice is, she tilted her head slightly, as if searching for something polite. It's very soulful, very urban, but I'm not sure our audience is ready for something quite so specific. A silence fell over the room. Urban. Specific. Malik knew exactly what that meant. Rick Harrison leaned forward, folding his hands. Look, Malik, you've clearly got raw talent. No question. But we're looking for broader appeal. Something more mainstream. More relatable to Middle America. Middle America. He knew what that meant, too. Melody Kane, who had stayed silent, finally spoke. Her voice soft but not necessarily kind. Your accent's pretty thick, sugar. Some of our viewers might have trouble understanding you. Have you thought about voice coaching? Maybe, to neutralize it a bit. Malik blinked. Neutralize my accent? The question hung in the air like smoke. It's not personal, Victoria added quickly, sensing the shift. It's just business. Our core demographic tends to respond better to certain types of voices. Maybe you'd be better suited for one of the more niche competitions. Niche. His voice, the one that had packed churches in the Treem, the one that made strangers cry in Frenchmen Street cafes, was being reduced to a niche. Not commercial. Not universal. Not palatable enough. Too much soul. Too much truth. Too black. Malik stood frozen for a moment. Not because he didn't understand, but because he understood too well. He looked at them, at the desk, the lights, the cameras, and the faces that saw his talent as a problem to be neutralized. Then he nodded. Not in agreement. In clarity. Thank you for your time, he said, his voice steady. And walked out. No one followed. No one clapped. No one stopped him. Back in the parking lot, the sun was already starting to dip behind the sound stages. Malik slid into the driver's seat of his Civic, hands still trembling from adrenaline and rage. For 10 minutes, he sat in silence, watching the place where his dream had just been told it didn't fit. Then, slowly, he reached for his phone, opened the camera, pressed record, and without introduction, he began to speak, not with bitterness, but with purpose. Y'all, Malik said into the camera, his voice low but steady, his New Orleans accent untouched, unfiltered. The streetlights reflected in his eyes as emotion started to build. I just got told that my voice is too urban for TV, that my accent needs to be neutralized, that Middle America won't relate to me, not because I can't sing, but because of who I am and how I sound. He let that sink in for a moment. No background music, just silence. Then he sighed, started his old Honda Civic, and pulled onto the road. Still recording. Still real. Still raw. So let me tell y'all what urban sounds like. Let me show you what needs to be neutralized. The city lights of Burbank blurred in the background as he drove, headlights washing over him like stage lights. And at the next red light, without warning, he began to sing, the same song that got him dismissed. But this time, it wasn't for judges. It was for everyone who had ever been told they were too much. Too black. Too loud. Too soft-spoken. Too different. Too specific. It's been a long time coming. His voice cracked slightly, not from lack of control, but from too much feeling. This wasn't a performance. It was a testimony. In the grainy light of his phone camera, Malik poured everything into the song. The sting of rejection. The weight of expectation. The strength it takes to be fully yourself in a world that keeps asking you to shrink. The video wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't auto-tuned. It wasn't framed perfectly. But it was true. That night, he posted it to YouTube with a caption that said everything. Too urban for TV. No hashtags. No filters. Just the title and the truth. By morning, 50,000 views. By lunchtime, 200,000. By the next sunrise, over 2 million and counting. The comments section turned into a river of support. This gave me chills. How is this voice too anything for anybody? I'm from Nebraska. This is the most moving thing I've heard all year. New Orleans accent equals gorgeous. Don't you dare change. This right here is the reason we need new gatekeepers. A teacher in Detroit played it for her students. A radio DJ in Atlanta looped it for an hour straight. TikTok flooded with duets of Malik's voice layered over stories of people being told to tone themselves down. Then, the celebrities stepped in. John Legend tweeted, "This is the voice America needs to hear. Malik, if you're reading this, keep singing. The world is listening." Alicia Keys posted the full video on her Instagram with the caption, "Authenticity will always win. Period." The story exploded. CNN aired a primetime segment. The voice too urban for TV? The View dedicated an entire episode to discussing racial and regional bias in entertainment. Trevor Noah joked, "How are you going to call someone too soulful for a singing competition? That's like kicking someone off a cooking show for using too much flavor." And while the media debated, Malik kept quiet. No interviews. No long statements. He just kept uploading songs, his way, in his voice, with his truth. 2 weeks after the rejection, and 2 million subscribers later, Malik's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Malik? This is Victoria Sterling from America's Next Voice." There was a pause. He didn't say a word. "I saw your video," she said quickly. We've been watching everything. And I want to say, we made a mistake. A big one." Another pause. She sounded nervous now. Less polished. More human. "I'd like to invite you back to the show. Not just as a contestant, as a feature. Prime slot. Your choice of song. And I want to offer a personal apology. On camera. We owe it to you and to our audience. It to you and to our audience." Malik didn't answer right away. Because in that moment, he wasn't just thinking about himself. He was thinking about the kids in New Orleans who sounded like him. The artists who were told they needed to change to be accepted. The future Maliks watching. So when he finally spoke, it was calm, direct, unapologetic. "I'll think about it," he said. And then he hung up. "Miss Sterling," Malik said, his voice calm but resolute. "With all due respect, I've got 17 million views on that video. 3 record labels flew out their A&R teams just to sit with me. Why would I come back to a show that told me I wasn't good enough for Middle America?" Silence. It stretched out long enough for Malik to consider hanging up. Again. But finally, Victoria spoke. Her voice lower now, stripped of her usual polish. "Because," she said slowly, "you could show the world that you were always good enough. And, maybe, help us do better." 3 weeks later, America's Next Voice aired its most watched episode in history, the Redemption Special. It opened not with fireworks or flash, but with accountability. Standing center stage in a tailored Navy suit, Victoria Sterling addressed the nation. 2 months ago, our panel made a mistake, not just in judgment, but in vision. We asked a young man to dilute himself for the sake of relatability. We were wrong. Malik Rivers did not need to change. We did. She went on to announce that the entire staff, from executive producers to camera crew, would undergo mandatory training in cultural sensitivity, regional dialect inclusion, and anti-bias practices. Because true talent, she said, comes in every accent, every background, every shade of human experience. And then the lights dimmed. A single spotlight hit the center of the stage. Malik walked out, not as a contestant, but as a movement. No backup dancers. No smoke machines. Just him in a dark green jacket, beads from his grandmother's church bracelet tucked around his wrist. He nodded once at the band and began to sing, "I was born by the river." The first note silenced the entire theater. By the second line, people were crying. By the chorus, the audience had risen to their feet. And by the time he reached the line, "It's been a long time coming," the camera caught even Rick wiping away a tear. All three judges slammed their yes buttons at the same time. But it no longer mattered, because Malik had already signed with Atlantic Records 2 days earlier. His debut single, titled Neutralize This, dropped the following week. A fierce, poetic anthem of identity, pride, and reclamation. It hit number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 within days, and was played everywhere from Brooklyn block parties to Nashville coffee shops. His first album, Authentic, was set to drop in the spring. The cover was simple. Malik sitting on his grandmother's porch, trumpet in one hand, microphone in the other, wearing the same church shoes he wore to his first audition. But the real victory came 6 months later. America's Next Voice unveiled its most diverse cast in the show's history. Contestants from HBCUs, first-generation immigrants, people with Southern drawls, Caribbean lilts, and Bronx-born staccatos. They didn't just sing differently, they lived differently. And now, the world wanted to hear all of it. Malik, for his part, remained grounded. He kept singing, kept speaking at schools, donated 10% of his album sales to a scholarship fund for students in New Orleans who dreamed of studying music. In interviews, when asked about his rejection, he never threw shade. Sometimes, he'd say, leaning forward with that same quiet fire in his voice, "A door has to slam shut before you realize you were never supposed to walk through it. You were meant to build your own house. And when you do, you leave the door open behind you." He never lost his New Orleans accent. Never wanted to. Because now Middle America and the rest of the world wasn't just accepting it. They were singing along. The original video, Too Urban for TV, eventually hit 100 million views. But what mattered more were the comments. Thousands of people, young and old, black and brown, queer, disabled, and marginalized in every way imaginable, sharing stories of being told they were too much to succeed. Too dark, too emotional, too poor, too foreign, too black. And Malik had shown them something simple, radical, and beautiful. That too much was often exactly enough.